Anna Walshe, 3 young kids at home. Where did she go?
We know that there was evidence that she once was threatened by her husband, then did not cooperate with authorities in the investigation.
At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to impound a body.
On January 4th of 2023, she was officially reported missing after she didn't show up to work. Brian also reported his wife missing and told authorities Anna left their home for a flight to D.C.
It is such an intimate, violent crime. And the parties had children who were in the home.
It's New Year's Eve 2022. A successful real estate executive hosts a quiet dinner party at her beautiful home in Cohasset, Massachusetts. 39-year-old Anna Walshe laughs with her husband Brian and their friend Jem Mutlu. They toast to the new year. Their 3 young sons, ages 2, 4, and 6, are sleeping upstairs. At 1:30 a.m., Jem leaves. Anna calls her mother in Serbia. She calls her sister. She tries to reach her maid of honor. They're all asleep. It's 7:30 a.m. in Belgrade. But Anna wants to share the new year with them. She's alone with her husband now. And in less than 5 hours, she'll be dead. Brian will tell police she left for a work emergency at 6 a.m., catching a rideshare to Logan Airport. But she never boarded a plane. She never called an Uber. She never left the house alive. Instead, sometime around 4:52 a.m. on January 1, 2023, Brian's iPad begins a series of Google searches that will haunt America. How long before a body starts to smell? Dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. How to clean blood from wooden floor. Can you be charged with murder without a body? What happens when you put body parts in ammonia? And at 11:48 a.m., how long for someone to be missing to inherit? By noon, Brian is at Lowe's buying a hacksaw, Tyvek suit, cleaning supplies, $4.62 in cash.
Just minutes ago, a vigil in Cohasset for Anna Walshe, the mother of 3 who's been missing since New Year's Day. While investigators continue their search, Anna's friends cling to the hope that she'll come home safe.
On the streets and in the neighborhoods of Cohasset, thoughts are with Anna Walshe, missing more than a week now, and members of the community finding the need to come together.
Cohasset's a small town, so I think for everyone to come together and show their love and support at the end of the day, like I said, she's a mom of 3 boys, so I think it is really nice for the community to do that.
What this community doesn't have and wants is answers. Anna Walshe was last seen early New Year's morning. Her husband telling investigators she was called to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency at her real estate firm. She was reported missing 3 days later.
By evening, he's throwing trash bags filled with bloody towels, a blood-soaked rug, and pieces of his wife into dumpsters near his mother's apartment. Anna Walshe's body has never been found. But on December 15, 2025, after a 2-week trial, 48 witnesses, and 6 hours of deliberation, a Massachusetts jury found Brian Walshe guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is the story of a mother who disappeared on New Year's Day. A husband who dismembered her and scattered her remains across Massachusetts. And the Google searches that proved he'd planned it all along. Anna Walshe was born in Belgrade, Serbia, in 1983. She grew up during a turbulent time in Serbian history, the breakup of Yugoslavia, economic sanctions, political upheaval. But Anna was determined to build a better life. She attended the prestigious 5th Belgrade Gymnasium and earned a bachelor's degree in French language and literature from the University of Belgrade. In 2005, at age 22, Anna emigrated to the United States. She started working in the hospitality industry, taking jobs at luxury hotels. She worked at the Inn at Little Washington in Virginia, one of the most renowned restaurants in America. Eventually, she moved to Massachusetts and worked at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, a 5-star resort in the Berkshires. That's where she met Brian Walshe. Brian Stephen Walshe was born in 1975. He came from a privileged background, his family had money, connections. But Brian was a hustler, always looking for the next deal, the next scheme. And Anna, beautiful, ambitious, cultured, seemed like the perfect partner. They married in 2016. Anna took his last name.
Good afternoon. It's Brian Walshe. I hope all is going well. I was just reaching out to basically everybody I could. Anna hasn't been in touch for a few days. Do you know anyone that might have had contact with her? Calling everyone. So sorry to bother you. Sure, everything's fine.
We begin tonight with some breaking news. The husband of the missing Cohasset mom has been arrested for allegedly misleading a police investigation.
Some of the searches are as follows. Keep in mind that the defendant said he left at 6 a.m. At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to embalm a body. At 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body.
They settled in Cohasset, an affluent coastal town south of Boston, and had 3 sons in quick succession. By all outward appearances, they were living the American dream. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Brian wasn't working a stable job. Instead, he was involved in various business ventures that never quite panned out. And in 2018, he was indicted by a federal grand jury for trying to sell 2 fake Andy Warhol paintings on eBay for $100,000. The scheme was audacious. Brian had taken 2 authentic, shadow paintings, by Andy Warhol from a friend in South Korea. He replaced them with forgeries and tried to sell the real paintings online. When the buyer received them and noticed they lacked Warhol Foundation authentication stamps and that the canvases looked new, the fraud was exposed. In April 2021, Brian pleaded guilty to 1 count each of wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud, possession of converted goods, and unlawful monetary transaction. He was placed on house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor, while awaiting sentencing. Meanwhile, Anna's career was thriving. In February 2022, she landed her dream job, regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, one of the world's most prominent real estate companies. The position was based in Washington, D.C.
Learning more about Anna Walshe's real estate portfolio as police investigate the missing Massachusetts mom's disappearance and murder. Walshe's husband is charged with her murder. Property records show she owned nearly $2 million worth of real estate.
Anna owned a number of properties in the area too, and some tenants reported that not long before she disappeared, she had asked them to move out.
Mr. Walshe, okay? Mr. Walshe, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Mr. Walshe, you remain held without bail of $500,000 on the other case. All set with us here today.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
It meant Anna would have to split her time between D.C. and Massachusetts. She rented an apartment in the capital and began commuting back and forth. The arrangement put strain on the marriage. Brian was stuck at home on house arrest with 3 young children while Anna was building a successful career in another city. Friends and co-workers noticed tension. Anna confided in friends that she was unhappy. The marriage was in crisis. And then Anna met someone else. William Fastow was a real estate colleague in D.C. Anna told her best friend Alyssa Kirby that she had a crush on him. The attraction was mutual. By late 2022, Anna and William were having an affair. Text messages and testimony would later reveal they'd grown close. Anna was torn. She had 3 young sons she adored, but she was deeply unhappy in her marriage. On Christmas Day 2022, Brian called Alyssa Kirby looking for Anna. Alyssa offered to check on her. She spoke to Anna that same day. Anna was upset that Brian had reached out to her friend. The marriage was unraveling. But Anna had no idea how dangerous her situation had become. On the night of December 31, 2022, Anna hosted a small New Year's Eve dinner at the family's rented home on Chief Justice Cushing Highway in Cohasset. Jem Mutlu, a close friend of both Anna and Brian, came over. They shared a meal, drank wine, talked about the new year ahead. Jem would later testify there was no indication of any impending tragedy. The evening seemed perfectly normal. Around 1:30 a.m. on January 1, 2023, Jem left. Anna and Brian were alone. Anna tried calling family members in Serbia to wish them a happy new year, but no one answered. It was already morning in Belgrade. According to Brian, Anna went to bed. Then, around 6 or 7 a.m., she woke up, got dressed in hunter boots, a black jacket, and her Hermes watch, and left the house to catch a rideshare to Logan Airport. She had a work emergency in D.C.
She's just so personable. She lights up a room. She's so passionate and fun and joyful. Really just someone who, like, you want to get to know immediately. And she's so interested in everyone and everything. And just a really beautiful, wonderful, passionate, joyful woman.
Brian had cooked an elaborate meal for us, and we hugged and celebrated and toasted, and just what you do over New Year's, and there was a lot of looking forward to the new year.
Good afternoon. It's Brian Walshe. I hope all is going well. I was just reaching out to basically everybody I could. Anna hasn't been in touch for a few days. Do you know anyone that might have had contact with her? Calling everyone. So sorry to bother you. Sure, everything's fine.
Brian claimed, and needed to move up a trip that had been scheduled for January 3rd. But prosecutors say that's all a lie. Anna never left the house. She never called an Uber or Lyft. No rideshare company has any record of picking her up. She never boarded a flight. Her credit and debit cards weren't used after January 1st. What really happened? At 4:52 a.m. on January 1, 2023, someone began searching the internet on Brian's iPad. The searches were chilling. How long before a body starts to smell? 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. Dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. How to clean blood from wooden floor. Luminol to detect blood. At 11:48 a.m., another search. Can you be charged with murder without a body? And later, how long for someone to be missing to inherit? Prosecutors believe Brian killed Anna sometime between 1:30 a.m., when Jem left, and 4:52 a.m., when the Google searches began. The exact method is unknown because Anna's body was never found. But investigators discovered blood and a broken, bloody knife in the basement of the Walshe home. After killing her, Brian began the grisly process of dismembering her body. Surveillance footage shows Brian leaving his house at 4:35 a.m. on January 1st and driving to a Lowe's hardware store in Rockland, Massachusetts. He arrives around 5:30 a.m., before the store even opens. He waits in the parking lot.
Cohasset police detectives, along with detectives from the Massachusetts State Police, as well as detectives from the towns of Hingham, Hull, Norwell, and Situate. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Are there suspicious circumstances here that you're concerned about?
At this point, it's a missing person investigation. We're just trying to locate Anna and get her home safely. Whether we have nothing to support anything suspicious or criminal. She was reported missing Wednesday. Simultaneously, we received simultaneous reports from her employer in Washington, D.C., as well as her husband, who lives here in Cohasset.
Was she supposed to get on a plane to go to Washington, D.C.? Was that why she would have left the house?
It was reported that she was that she took a ride share from her home in Cohasset to Logan Airport to board a plane to go to Reagan International Airport in D.C.
When the store opens, he pays $462 in cash for a hacksaw, utility knife, hammer, snips, a Tyvek suit, disposable full-body coveralls, shoe guards, rags, and cleaning supplies. He returns home and spends the day dismembering Anna's body in the basement. The hacksaw recovered from a dumpster later tested positive for her blood. On January 2nd, 3, and 4, surveillance cameras capture a man, believed to be Brian. Wearing a face mask, throwing trash bags into dumpsters near his mother's apartment complex in Swampscott, about an hour north of Cohasset. Inside those trash bags, investigators would later find a hacksaw with Anna's blood on it, a bloody piece of rug, bloody towels, Anna's hunter boots. Anna's black jacket. Anna's COVID-19 vaccination card. Hair samples that DNA testing linked to Anna. Brian had scattered pieces of his wife across Massachusetts. Her torso, her limbs, her head. All dismembered, stuffed into trash bags, and thrown away like garbage. Anna's body has never been recovered. To this day, her remains are somewhere in a landfill or were incinerated at a waste facility. On January 4, 2023, Anna's employer, Tishman Speyer, reported her missing. She hadn't shown up for work and wasn't answering calls or emails. The company requested a welfare check at the Walshe residence in Cohasset. Police arrived and spoke to Brian.
Your Honor, the charge before the court right now, the defendant is charged under the intimidation, that being misleading the police in the course of an investigation. The investigation was into the missing person of Anna Walshe. Surveillance was checked by several police during this time frame. These statements caused a lot of delay as part of the investigation, as police now were focusing on the North Shore.
He told them Anna had left on New Year's Day for a work emergency in D.C. He said she'd taken an Uber or Lyft to Logan Airport around 6 or 7 a.m. He hadn't heard from her since. Cohasset Police Department Detective Rita Kovacs immediately found Brian's story suspicious. She contacted rideshare companies. No records of Anna requesting a ride. She checked with Logan Airport. Anna hadn't boarded any flights. She reviewed Anna's phone records and bank activity. Nothing since January 1st. On January 5th, Brian called police again and officially reported Anna missing. Investigators executed a search warrant on the Walshe home. In the basement, they found blood spatter. A broken knife. Evidence that someone had tried to clean up a crime scene. Forensic testing confirmed the blood was Anna's. On January 8, 2023, Brian Walshe was arrested and charged with misleading police in the investigation of Anna's disappearance. As investigators dug deeper, the evidence mounted.
They met at the Four Seasons Hotel in the lobby, and he treated her to lunch. Totally legit. They were on my desk in my gallery the next morning when I arrived, and I knew immediately. I could see that the paint was fresh. I tore the back paper off the frame, the stretcher bar, and saw underneath that the canvas wasn't aged. I've bought over 1,000 Andy Warhol artworks, and he was the one and only guy who got one past me. She seemed like kind of scared by the whole thing and said there's no way my husband would have done something like this. And she was the one who got Brian to call me back and work out a resolution. She was very kind and respectful, and I picked up on her being kind of scared by an accusation from my side.
They obtained surveillance footage from stores Brian had visited in early January. They tracked his movements using his ankle monitor GPS data. Remember, he was on house arrest for the art fraud case. They searched dumpsters and trash facilities. On January 18, 2023, Brian Walshe was arrested again, this time charged with murder and improper conveyance of a human body, the legal term for illegally disposing of remains. Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey held a press conference. The fact that he was willing to lie to police about it and mislead the investigation is highly suspicious, Morrissey said. Brian pleaded not guilty to all charges. Over the next 2 years, as the case slowly moved through the court system, Anna's family in Serbia mourned. Anna's mother, Milanka Ljubisic, spoke to Serbian media. Anna was a wonderful daughter, a loving mother, an ambitious woman, she said through tears. Her children will grow up without her. It's unbearable. The Walshes' 3 young sons were placed in state custody. Their mother was dead. Their father was in jail. Their family was shattered. Then, in September 2025, just weeks before the trial was set to begin, Brian Walshe was stabbed during a prison attack. He survived, but the trial was postponed while the defense requested a mental competency evaluation. Finally, on November 18, 2025, jury selection began. But in a surprise move, moments before the jury was seated, Brian Walshe changed his plea on 2 charges: misleading police and improper conveyance of a human body. He pleaded guilty to both. But he maintained his innocence on the murder charge. The trial began on December 2, 2025, in Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts. Prosecutor Gregory Connor Yass laid out the state's case in his opening statement. This was a man who was motivated by money, Yass told the jury.
Early in this investigation, the police developed probable cause to believe that her husband, Brian Walshe, age 47, had misled police investigators on material matters important to the search for Anna Walshe. He has pled not guilty to those charges and is currently being held at the Norfolk County House of Correction. The continued investigation has now allowed police to obtain an arrest warrant charging Brian Walshe with the murder of his wife.
He was very calculated, almost genius about how he went about things.
The elder Walshe and his son had been estranged for years after Brian Walshe absconded with almost $1 million from Dr. Thomas Walshe. Court records also say because of the alleged theft, it required Dr. Thomas Walshe to continue working past the age at which he had wished to retire, as a significant amount of his savings were stolen and never returned.
Brian was the sole beneficiary of Anna's $2.7 million life insurance policy. He believed Anna was having an affair. Their marriage was in crisis. And Brian saw a way out: kill Anna, collect the insurance money, and move on. The defense, led by attorney J.W. Carney Jr. and Kelly Porges, offered a dramatically different story. Defense attorney Tracy Minor told the jury that Brian woke up on New Year's Day and found Anna dead in their bed. Her death was sudden and unexplained. Panicked and confused, Brian made the catastrophically bad decision to dismember her body and dispose of it. He never thought anybody would believe that Anna Walshe was alive 1 minute and dead the next, the defense argued. All he could think about was their 3 boys. Over 2 weeks, the prosecution called 48 witnesses. Jem Mutlow, the friend who had dinner with the Walshes on New Year's Eve. Alyssa Kirby, Anna's best friend, who testified about Anna's unhappiness and her affair. William Fastow, the man Anna was having an affair with. Co-workers from Tishman Speyer. Police investigators. Forensic scientists who testified about the blood evidence. Store employees who remembered Brian purchasing cleaning supplies and tools. The most damning testimony came from Massachusetts State Police Trooper Nicholas Guarino, who extracted data from Brian's electronic devices. He walked the jury through Brian's Google search history on January 1, 2023. The timeline was devastating. 4:52 a.m., how long before a body starts to smell? 4:55 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body. 5:47 a.m., dismemberment and best ways to dispose of a body. 6:25 a.m., how to clean blood from wooden floor. 11:48 a.m., can you be charged with murder without a body? 1:10 p.m., how long for someone to be missing to inherit? 1:13 p.m., what happens when you put body parts in ammonia?
As Brian got older, he sort of lost touch with how people make it in the world and just assumed a mantle of entitlement. There were signs he was a con artist. There was more than signs. There was ample examples. But there was never a mean streak. There was never even an angry stare.
Did any of Brian's behavior strike me in any way as off-key? Nothing.
Out to her mother in Serbia on December 25th, Christmas Day. The text read, quote, "Please, Mama, come tomorrow." A request her mother denied.
When a phone has been shut off for a few days, it's concerning.
Hairs were standing on the back of their neck when they first arrived at his house on January 4th.
The husband of the Massachusetts woman missing since New Year's Day, now formally charged with her murder.
He is probably the stupidest murderer who's ever walked the face of the planet Earth.
The defense tried to argue that Brian only started searching these terms after finding Anna dead, that he was in shock and trying to figure out what to do. Defense attorney Tracy Tipton asked Guarino to confirm that the dark searches only started after 4:52 a.m. Guarino confirmed. But the prosecution pointed out, if Anna died of natural causes, why would Brian's first instinct be to dismember her body and look up how to dispose of it? Surveillance footage showed Brian at multiple stores. Lowe's, Walgreens, CVS, Stop and Shop, buying supplies. In many instances, he wore a face mask and paid with cash, clearly trying to avoid identification. DNA evidence linked Anna to the bloody hacksaw, rug, and towels recovered from dumpsters. And then there was the life insurance. A representative testified that Anna had more than $1 million in life insurance. Some sources said $2.7 million, with Brian as the sole beneficiary. The prosecution rested on December 11, 2025. The defense rested on December 12, without calling a single witness. Brian Walshe did not testify in his own defense. Despite his attorney's opening statement suggesting Brian would explain what really happened, he chose to remain silent. On December 13, both sides gave closing arguments. Prosecutor Yass reminded jurors of the overwhelming evidence. Brian Walshe premeditatedly murdered his wife, dismembered her body, and disposed of her remains to avoid being caught, he said. Defense attorney Tipton argued the state hadn't proven premeditation. Yes, Brian disposed of Anna's body. Yes, he lied to police. But those actions don't prove he killed her. Maybe she did die suddenly, and Brian panicked. On December 15, 2025, after 6 hours of deliberation over 2 days, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. Brian Walshe stared straight ahead as the verdict was read. He showed no emotion. Anna's sister, who had flown from Serbia for the trial, whispered, "Justice has been served." On December 18, 2025, Brian Walshe appeared in court for sentencing. Judge Diane Fournier addressed him directly. "Mr. Walshe, you will live with the guilt and burden of Anna Walsh's death for the rest of your life," she said. She sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Rather than divorce, it was believed that Brian Walshe dismembered Anna Walshe and discarded her body.
Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey, who had been heavily criticized for his handling of the Karen Reed case, called this verdict a vindication. "This is the first case I can remember where a first-degree murder conviction was secured without a body," he said. Legal analyst Jennifer Roman agreed. This was a huge win for the prosecution, not having a body, not having a cause of death. They convinced 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that Brian Walshe not only killed her, but he premeditated that murder. Brian Walshe is currently incarcerated in Massachusetts. His federal sentence for the art fraud case, 37 months, will run concurrently with his life sentence. Anna Walsh's 3 sons are being raised by family members. They are now 5, 7, and 9 years old. They will grow up without their mother. Their father will spend the rest of his life in prison. Anna's family in Serbia continues to mourn. Her mother gave a statement through the Serbian consulate. "Anna was full of life, full of dreams. She worked so hard to build a career, to provide for her children. And her own husband took that all away." The case has drawn comparisons to other high-profile, no-body murder cases: Scott Peterson, Drew Peterson, Chris Watts. In each case, husbands killed their wives and attempted to cover it up. And in each case, investigators were able to build a case strong enough for conviction even without recovering remains. But Anna Walsh's case is unique in one chilling detail: the Google searches. Rarely has a defendant so thoroughly documented his own guilt. Brian's iPad became a digital confession, a minute-by-minute record of his thoughts as he planned to dismember and dispose of his wife's body. How long before a body starts to smell? He wanted to know how much time he had. Can you be charged with murder without a body? He thought he could get away with it. How long for someone to be missing to inherit? He was already thinking about the life insurance money. Those searches condemned him. And they ensured that even though Anna's body has never been found, justice was served. Anna Walshe should be here. She should be watching her sons grow up. She should be excelling in her career. She should be living the life she worked so hard to build. Instead, she's gone. Murdered by her husband on New Year's Day. Dismembered. Scattered. Lost forever. But she is not forgotten. Anna Walshe's story is a reminder that domestic violence can hide behind closed doors in even the wealthiest communities. That financial stress, infidelity, and control can turn deadly. And that technology, the very tool Brian Walshe thought would help him get away with murder, was ultimately what convicted him. Rest in peace, Anna. Your sons will know the truth. The world will remember your name. And your killer will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Investigators recovered 10 trash bags. Inside the trash bags, many of these items contained stains consistent with blood. That Brian Walshe dismembered Anna Walshe and discarded her body. At 5 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to embalm a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m. on the 1st, how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m. on the 1st, can you throw away body parts? At 9:29 a.m., what does formaldehyde do? At 9:34 a.m. on the 1st, how long does DNA last? At 9:59 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? At 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. At 11:44, how to clean blood from wooden floor. At 11:56 on the 1st, luminol to detect blood. At 1:08, what happens when we put body parts in ammonia? At 1:21 p.m., is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them? Those were on the January 1st.
The defendant will be held without bail pending indictment.
He walks to the dumpster carrying a garbage bag. He's leaning, and it appears to be heavy as he has to heft it into the dumpster. He walks to the dumpster with the garbage bag and leaves it. On 4:48, he hit another complex in Abington, and at 5:10 p.m., cell phone shows records at another apartment in Brockton. The phone traveled to the complex where his mother lives at 9:30 a.m., went for about 5 minutes around the building to the southeast corner. In the southeast corner of that complex is where there was a dumpster. The dumpster was later secured and searched. These bags and what was in them were already picked up and taken to a location for shredding and to be incinerated.
She always described him as her best friend. You know, that they were very close, like love at first sight. That was always what she said. That she trusted him, that, you know, anything he may have done wrong in the past, maybe it was just bad choices. She was a good person. And it's sort of like knowing that now it's jarring, it's gut wrenching, it's uncomfortable, to even think that like someone who's appears so calm and collected could, you know, be capable of something you just don't expect.